Hi, my name is Danielle Anderson, and I am Deer Valley's Wellness Specialist. In this webinar style presentation, I will be talking about stress and how to work around stressors that are normal in our day to day lives. Stress and how we interact with stress can be compared to a line of dominoes, with one hitting into the next and into the next and into the next. And because stress is actually a reaction, a response, one that is necessary for our survival, it protects us by getting our bodies ready for whatever may happen. Stressors often begin this reaction. They are whatever it is that might set us off. And stressors can be both internal and external. External being those that are outside of ourselves, and internal being those that are like thoughts and emotions and pain. And the funny thing is that thoughts and feelings can also end up being the stress that we experience and inevitably become additional stressors for us. So, some stressors are so severe, the only option to avoid the stress that comes with it is to avoid the circumstance altogether. But these are like very severe things like being in active war or having exposure to toxic chemicals. The only way to avoid these types of stressors are to just avoid it altogether. And so these are not normal. They're not normal or daily stressors. Normal stressors are those that are kind of unavoidable in life, the relationship issues, job expectations, tests, assignments, future fears, etc. And these are the kind of stressors that actually should not be avoided. They should be dealt with. And if not, the avoidance itself creates this cycle of stress, which can impact your health and your well being and can also develop into various forms of anxiety and depression. So, we form thoughts and behaviors around how we deal with the stressors. And unfortunately, negative attitudes and beliefs about ourselves and others and about what is possible often interferes with our ability to grow and heal around these kinds of difficulties. And so, one thing to keep in mind is that in order for something to feel stressful, it must actually first be viewed as a threat. And so, how we perceive and ultimately deal with stress is largely influenced by how we have previously dealt with stress. We have the ability to manipulate the relationship we have with stress every single time we experience it. Here are just some examples of the stressors that teens face. With the major one being trying to put it all together and trying to struggle or juggle with all of the expectations that are expected of them. So, research has found that during the school year, teens experience more stress than what is considered healthy, and these amounts are actually on average more than what is experienced by adults. And while this is a pretty staggering idea on its own, it is important that we also acknowledge that this is the same time where students are fine-tuning their stress coping methods. And these are those habits that are going to continue on through their adulthood. So now let's imagine that the heavy amounts of stress that have never before been experienced are coupled with potentially inefficient stress management skills and or maladaptive coping methods. When stress is mismanaged, there's an increased risk of depression and anxiety and overall student burnout. Maladaptive coping skills can be seen with like self-harm, binge eating, substance abuse, all of these things that feel or may elicit a temporary sense of relief, but don't actually address the problem or stressors. And so when stress is avoided or dealt with inappropriately, it has the potential to become cyclical. And so, what exactly is happening in the body when it is reacting to stressors around it? The human body responds to stressors by activating the nervous system and specific hormones. The hypothalamus signals the adrenal glands to produce more of the hormones adrenaline and cortisol, and it releases them into the bloodstream. The hormones then speed up the heart rate, breathing rate, blood pressure, and metabolism. Blood vessels open wider to let more blood flow to large muscle groups. Our pupils dilate to improve vision, and the liver releases stored glucose to increase the body's energy. All of these things more or less happening at once, and all are happening so that the body can essentially protect itself in dangerous situations. And so our responses actually become habitual, and that means that we don't have to take as much time to recognize a threat and we can just react. And so this physical response to stress kicks in much more quickly in teens than in adults because the part of the brain that can calmly assess danger and call off the stress response, the prefrontal cortex, is not actually fully developed in adolescence. So That's positive in some ways and negative in others. With time and age, these stressors are dealt with in the same way. Those habits that form could be potentially unhealthy. And so the ways that we may deal with the stressors, they become a source of stress themselves by demanding their own attention and their own energy. And lifelong patterns of hyperarousal, which is when the body is constantly in ready mode, is incredibly draining and can impact all areas of health in a negative way. Here are some signs that indicate that stress is potentially getting to you. If you are experiencing increase in headaches and stomach aches and you're requiring more sleep, if you have changes in your eating and sleeping habits, if you're feeling hopeless and depressed and nervous and tense and anxious, and or like your emotions are completely out of control, and you're withdrawing from friends and family and regular activities, and you're having difficulty concentrating, these are all different signs that stress is getting to you. And now, working through stressors without the right tools can obviously impact every area of life. But although these are typical examples, the results of how stress is experienced is going to look pretty different on everyone. So it might mean that you just feel hopeless, or it might mean that you feel all of these things. And so it really just depends person to person. So, there are some ways to work through stress and to make sure at least that it doesn't get any worse. And so, one major way to work through stress in a positive way is to take care of yourself. A healthy lifestyle that promotes regular activity and sleep and eating is a lifestyle that provides a foundation for managing stress. It's not actually causing more stress with these things being out of whack. And so, another way to manage stress is to understand that our thoughts and fears and emotions aren't actually dictating how we need to respond. Sometimes we have thoughts that we don't have to believe. And so, even when the mind convinces us with absolute certainty of how a situation has to play out, we have to just keep in mind that the stress that we're experiencing is mostly based on how we're perceiving this particular stressor. But we have the ability to build new relationships with the stressors that we regularly encounter. And so many times the reason stress might feel insurmountable is because a stressor makes us feel inadequate in some way. It challenges our social status, our ego, our beliefs, and very often our desire to control a situation. And so accepting that we can't control everything, that we're just not perfect, that it's okay to look for others for guidance, allows us to respond to our stressors in a very different way. Number three is to remain connected. And connected means that connecting to yourself and connecting to others. Being aware of the types of stressors that exist in your life and taking note of how you typically respond, how they make you physically feel or emotionally feel, makes it much easier to adjust how each stressor is dealt with in the future. Staying connected to friends and family, sharing how certain situations are hard to deal with, can actually help reduce the pressure of the situation. In the moment, number four, it's really important to take time to breathe. Breathing helps slow everything down. Breathing helps you to adequately assess a situation more realistically as it's actually happening. And lastly, number five, the stress we often feel is feels like it's a heavy weight. And so you need to find what feels good for you. For each individual, it might look differently, but you want to seek out enjoyable activities. You want to take a break if things are causing you stress. You want to accept yourself for who you are. You want to let go of these ideals of perfection, and you want to create small, attainable goals that can help lead you toward things that are positive in your life. So, these are all various ways that you can use to help manage stress in your life. And lastly, getting to know you and how you feel about the world around you and your role in it is so, so important. There's two kind of programs that you can look at that will help you do this, and they both are related to connecting with your own emotions and just kind of understanding who you are. Social emotional learning is a program that's actually designed for both children and adults, and it's all about managing your emotions, setting and achieving positive goals, feeling and showing empathy for others, establishing and maintaining positive relationships, and in general, just making responsible decisions based on how you might be embracing situations as they are. Mindfulness is kind of a method more than a program, I suppose, and it's all about awareness, and awareness that combats our normal daily habitual responses. For many of us, being in touch with who we are and how we feel, it's just not what people do. And so it's a really helpful way to navigate your life. So we often get caught up in thoughts of the future or rehashing the past, but being present is looking and feeling and seeing and overall experiencing life in each moment as it happens. And being in the present moment is also about acceptance. So embracing that moment means acknowledging when we're not feeling good or when we're feeling sad or feeling mad, just as much as it's about seeing and feeling happiness and joy. So these are just two more ideas that can help to work through stresses. And so here are some references that were used within the making of this presentation. I highly suggest Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn. It is a very step-by-step method to working through mindfulness and dealing with all kinds of things that could be happening in your life, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And so my name is Danielle Anderson, and I am Deer Valley's Wellness Specialist. Feel free to contact me if you have ideas for a webinar or if you have questions about this one. Thank you so much. Have a great day.